Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the Starfleet Night Shift, our continuing mission to discuss strange new worlds, TM, to review Star Trek in all its iterations, to boldly talk about Trek we've all seen before. What's up, guys?
Hey, everyone, this is the Night
Great
Shift.
rendition.
Yes, that was excellent, dude. I'm Commander Justin, and who you just heard was Captain Merrick. Followed by our other co-hosts that we have here too as well, Chief Jennifer, that we have here, and Science Officer Azure.
Sazure.
We are the Night Crew. Azure.
No.
We are the Night Crew. How is everyone doing today? This is the Night Shift, a podcast and community run by those who love all things Trek. Our mission is to bring positivity, passion, and enthusiasm for the franchise to everyone we can. But yeah, I'm excited for this, guys. Podcast, Star Trek, in general, I think it's
For
just
our new
gonna be
sweet
super
spot
fun.
that we found up here
Dude, a
on
new
floor
sweet spot.
47.
Right?
God, dude. Can you believe it? And anyone's
Amazing.
here that wants to watch us and hang out with us too, we are here. I don't know what...
I was gonna say there's not
What-
probably going to be a
what
lot
instance
to
are-
watch.
I mean, we're in
Unless
Earth
you wanna
Space
just-
they wanna
Dock
hang
number
out,
4.
and they always want to hang out.
I mean, there's some sweet other spots on these couches up here. Listen, guys, I played STO for a long time. I had no idea that the mezzanine was a thing up here, and it's so nice.
Yeah, I'd
Right?
never seen this either.
There's literally no one up here because I doubt there's much reason to come. But now
Except
that
the
they've-
view.
Yeah, the view is so good. And with lighting 2.0, dude, oh my God. Do you see the sun coming through the windows and stuff? It's wild.
Dude, did you even see the 3D chess? That's on the table right now too.
Is that
Just crazy.
My God,
Yeah.
it is 3D chess.
Yep.
3D chess.
I'm kind of mad that we can't play. They sell
Right?
this, you know. I've been to conventions where they have the boxes. You can buy 3D chess. I assume. I think there's rules for it and everything. You
I
guys
would
ever
hope.
played
It's got to be
3D chess?
I have not.
It sounds awesome.
Man, I definitely would like to learn to play it.
Okay, next stream 3D chess, guys.
Right?
Let's go.
3D chess. What I wanted to bring to attention too a little bit on Star Trek, I think is a really good topic, is for people that are actually new to following us now, that's transitioned over from Twitch and our love with Star Trek.
Yeah.
What would you say is how would you introduce Star Trek to someone that's completely new to it? What's like the for one of our friends, how would you recommend it? What series would you start off with first, and then going into?
Oh God,
You know,
that's
and, like-
such a
like-
good question.
It's just like
Um,
because I keep thinking about it. You have a lot of these questions that come up, in our Discord too as well, where they're like, hey, Star Trek, yeah, I'll look into it,
Yeah,
or I should
yeah.
watch these. But we had someone that came in the other, from maybe like a couple weeks ago. And that was just like, yeah, for Star Trek, what would you guys recommend to watch first? I saw, and I quote, they said that they saw the reboot 2009, right?
The movie,
So for the movie, right? And
Mhm.
and from there, just on that base, what would you recommend to watch first?
My God, that's a good question. I just want to say,
I could hop in.
yeah, no, I
Yeah.
just wanted to say, the question is really good because we come across this a lot. And just to follow up on what Justin said, if you guys are new here, if you end up catching us on YouTube, we are friends that come from a gamer community. We basically have streamed on Twitch, playing games for a long time, found that we all loved Star Trek and sort of moved over here. But we have basically ended up having this real life thing come up over and over and over again. I think this is probably one of the greatest, most relatable Trekkie things ever, is that you're super into Star Trek. How the heck do you get your friends into it? Or if you finally get someone that's like, yeah, I'll check it out. How do I do it? Oh my God, that's probably one of the most hotly debated Star Trek topics that exists. So yeah, Jennifer, go ahead. You go.
Well, okay, so the way I would approach this is I would need to ask the person a few questions because I think it's not necessarily the same for everyone. So I have what I like to call tiers of recommendations. And so for somebody who, after I ask them what they like, what other shows they've watched, what other sci-fi they've watched, what other old sci-fi they've watched, if I can kind of get a feeling like they could enjoy and get through the original series, I would recommend that they actually start in chronological order, and I consider it kind of the ideal way. Also, you're going to be increasing production value as you go, so there won't be any sort of disappointment in the production
Okay.
value going down.
That's
It'll
a good
only be
point.
increasing, and you'll get to kind of see that whole progression. And I really do think that's the best way to do it, if you can, if the person's able to. Although now my recommendation has changed for like my tier 2 recommendation since Strange New Worlds came out. So before that, I might have said, hop into TNG, or if you're really not even feeling that, maybe hop into DS9. But at this point, I think recommending Strange New Worlds is a really nice compromise, because you're getting them in maybe not chronologically in production, but you are getting them in chronologically in the actual timeline. And there's so many episodes from Strange New Worlds at this point that connect to one of the original series episodes. So while you're watching Strange New Worlds, I had a friend that I recommended it to, and she ended up actually watching the episode that episode related to from the original series, and kind of got hooked in that way. So I think
The
at
Balance
this
of Terror.
point, the Balance of Terror, right?
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think at this
Good point.
point, recommending Strange New Worlds to somebody who is new, who you don't really feel is going to be able to get through the
old stuff.
1960s production value, is a really good alternative.
I think that's a great point.
That's a good point.
I do need to step in here and make one tiny correction.
Yes.
That is not chronological order in the universe.
Oh, well.
We're forgetting Enterprise.
Guys, it's been a long road.
Oh, you can't.
Getting from there to here.
Oh, God,
Yeah,
I
but-
You,
was
you asked for it. You asked for it.
Okay, no. Enterprise is like the prologue you watch later. No.
Whoa.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that your recommendation there makes a lot of sense. I just couldn't resist chiming in.
Yeah,
and
no,
pointing out.
that's fair. That's fair.
Wait. Wouldn't chronological order then be
Oh,
First Contact?
Oh my God, you're right.
Oh.
Bro, don't you
Well,
need to
hold
watch
on.
First Contact to really appreciate Enterprise? Hot take?
I mean,
Yeah, you
Zephyr
would
Bloody
need to
Cochrane,
watch
okay? From
Zephyr
Enterprise comes and starts
Yeah.
off the show. I mean, it's, I'm just saying.
I'm trying
so
to think.
true.
I'm trying to think how much that would change my appreciation of the movie. But I will.
Yeah.
I will somewhat concede that yes, technically you are right, correcting my
First Contact.
technically to Junie.
Okay, I want to try something though, guys. Like, say I'm completely new to Star Trek.
I'm
How would
completely
you
new to
sell
Star
it to
Trek.
me? How would you sell it to me? Like, for
Well,
someone that's just getting into it. Like, what would
Azure, do you want to
ask?
take the next serious response to the question?
Oh, no. I have to be serious now. Do you mean
No,
how would I
not
sell
at
it to you based on like how I know you?
Yeah, like
or
if-
just
well,
to
I
a
mean-
generic anyone knew.
To generic anyone new. I would say generically anyone new. That you're like, I've watched this series. I think it's amazing. I think it's really great to, influence people in general, make you better human beings, right? As we've mentioned before. How would
Yeah.
you put that into perspective of like, hey, I think you should watch the series. I think you should, have a look at it. At least give it a shot. And
Yeah,
get
which is
into it.
funny
Like,
because
how
I
would
think
you-
out of all of us, I've probably made this pitch to the fewest people because so many people in my life are either already
Already.
Trekkies or
Mhm.
have like insisted that like they don't have any interest in getting into it. So I don't know. Like you guys can obviously jump in with your points, but I think what I would encourage or what I would sell about the series or about the series is that for the most part, and especially the ones that I would recommend first, the shows take on this sort of like really inspiring spirit of like, let's go out and explore and learn about like this stuff that we don't understand yet or haven't figured out yet, or
Right.
encounter new points of view and like figure out what that means to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one, that's just a valuable experience is to, even if it's just you sort of like through the characters experiencing this sort of sense of exploration. But that's what sold me on the shows is the that sense of like going out and encountering the unknown and like learning from it and getting more experience. I also think that, again, I'm going to say for the most part, because there's a couple series that we might talk about later, where this isn't so much true, but that also overwhelmingly, even when there are bad or sad things that happen, they have an overwhelmingly positive outlook and positive sort of spin on like, how do we make the best out of this? And how do we like encourage the best in both ourselves and others? And I think that's really valuable too.
Yeah. Sort of all of those things and it being super optimistic, right? Like there's like an intrinsically altruistic value to Star Trek, I think. Like, there's a lot of things out there where we sort of delve into space and experience space stuff, but I think what makes Star Trek super unique is the, like the boldly going in a way to try to make friends, make peace, and there's always some sort of like positive spin on the whole thing. At least in the most of the Star Treks that we're talking about. I just love this question because I would say, as opposed to Azure, I'm probably the person who has tried the most to get various people into Star Trek. I have run into walls left, right, and center with various people. I have corrupted, or dare I say inspired, I don't know, a bunch of people, like a ton of people to get into Star Trek who were not into Star Trek before. A lot of success stories, but also a lot of failures. And it's always interesting to see how do we approach it with this particular person. I think I used to try like a catch-all thing in the past, but I've since began to tailor make my approach to each person that I'm talking to, because I think Jennifer made excellent points. There's a desire not just for like a streamlined evolution of plot, right? Like from the first series to the second one to the third to the fourth, and so that you feel like you're really attached to the evolution of the IP itself. Like there's a desire that you want someone to get it that way, right? I would prefer you to watch it in order. But I think what it really comes down to is more so your desire to recreate the experience that you had in other people, right? Because that's what I feel. And when I say, man, I really want someone to start from the beginning, do you think I'm talking about TOS? I'm not. I'm talking about TNG. Because for me, TNG is the first one. And that's because that's where I started. And then go forward from there. And then I went and appreciated TOS so many years later in the way that I could, which was like, I've really gotten a grip on this now. And now I can go appreciate. Let's connect it to maybe like Doctor Who, right? You want to get someone to Doctor Who? You want them to go back and watch the first Doctor? No, you don't. Of course you don't. And if you do, you're crazy. Like, you have got to form an attachment to the show, to the characters, to the series, to the universe that it's set in, before you can go back and appreciate something that's a little harder to appreciate because it's older, less quality, not just in graphics, but sometimes in storytelling. And let's be honest, TOS is exactly that. I think it's much easier to appreciate it when it's connected to something that you know already. And one of the greatest examples of that I've ever seen in any show to date, not just Star Trek, but in reality, is Strange New Worlds. And I loved Jennifer's point to that, right? Because Strange New Worlds is maybe the most accessible Star Trek to date to a modern viewer. It's gorgeous. The graphics are amazing. The characters, modernly relatable, right? And everything about the new storylines are not even just hyper graphical, achievements or whatever, but it's also not only relatable to a modern audience, but relatable to those of us who like classic Trek, because the storytelling and the writing is similar to classic Trek. So I would say that me seeing someone getting into Discovery as a brand new Trekkie, I'm like, okay, I'm glad you're into Star Trek and that's great, but I don't, because you've watched this, I don't necessarily know that you're going to like the rest of Star Trek. Like, that's the reaction that I have to that. But if you watch Strange New Worlds, not only is that in the spirit of classic Trek with a modern twist, but it's also intrinsically connected to TOS, which, especially with the Balance of Terror, my God, it's like you can't even appreciate the Balance of Terror. I mean, you can't even appreciate the finale of Strange New Worlds without actually having seen the Balance of Terror episode from the 60s. So I think that's an awesome way to get into it if you're concerned that someone won't be able to do it otherwise. But deep down in my heart of hearts, I want someone to start the way I did. I want someone to start with TNG and then get to know, because I always feel like TNG sets the stage. Everything is perfect. The 24th century utopia is set firmly in place. And then DS9 walks in and goes, aha, now that you know how perfect everything is, let's see what happens to this utopia when blank, blank, and blank happens, when there's war and famine and lack of plenty and all these crazy things. Like, let's see what happens to them. You can't really appreciate that unless you know the status quo first. And then Voyager has its own set of things. Like, I feel like it evolves itself as it sort of goes, but it is tough because, as you guys know, season 1 and 2 of TNG, maybe not the easiest thing to someone to get into.
Speaking of, the first 2 seasons of TNG maybe being a little bit difficult for some, what would you say about incorporating the movies as a recommendation. Now, I know personally for you,
Yeah,
you
very
actually
cool.
watched the original series movies first.
Well, not
with
first, at the same
TNG
time.
at the same
Yeah.
time as TNG,
Yeah.
but it gave you an introduction to those characters. So even though you didn't know those characters when they were younger in the original series, television show, you did know
Mhm.
those characters
I
as for reference from their older counterparts in the movies. So as maybe a tier 1B option would be to actually start people with maybe the Wrath of Khan, and then maybe watch a few of the movies and then go into TNG having a little bit of something from a movie perspective first.
I would argue that
Yeah.
it's peripheral and awesome to like, because those movies are all great, but do they add to the experience of walking into TNG or make any kind of direct connection to Star Trek going forward? I don't think so. It's kind of like saying, let's start, like, how about somebody watches a little bit of the 8th Doctor before the 9th Doctor? Like, there's such a gap. It was really like the next generation sort of cut ties and then started a new chapter. And so, yeah, I believe watching the TOS movies allows you to maybe better get into the TOS show later, but as a means to sort of walk forward into the greater modern Trek verse, I mean,
So wait,
it
so
won't
you really
hurt it,
think
but I don't think it
maybe-
helps it that
But
much.
do you think it would be easier then for somebody to get through the first season of TNG than it would be for someone to watch
Oh, I see.
The Wrath of Khan
Mm.
coming from absolutely nothing, especially somebody
you
who
might be right.
is used to other sci-fi? At least with The Wrath of Khan, you have a bit of that, movie magic. It's exciting, it's dramatic, it's a whole movie arc.
That's true.
And that might grab people in just a little bit to the concept of the Trek universe, which
Well,
might
it's-
make going through the originals, the TNG, a little bit easier.
It's
And then-
interesting because
Junie.
I was gonna say the tough sell there is with a movie you're committing like 2-2-ish hours of your time, and then I actually changed my mind when Jennifer pointed out, what about that versus an entire season of TNG, which is a good point.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's true. I actually heard from another podcast. This is funny because somebody was sort of like briefly talked about this. In fact, in one of the podcasts that I was watching, someone asked, I think, the podcasters how you would get someone into Trek, and someone came up with a really interesting thing. They said, I would prefer you to start with TNG and then watch just the first episode where you like encounter at Farpoint, so you get an idea of Q, and then I think it was one other episode into in season 1, and then move on to season 2 at a Measure of a Man specifically, and then going forward, and then say, hey, if by this point you finished A Measure of a Man and you're like, I didn't like this, then you could be like, yeah, maybe Trek's not for you. You know what I mean? Like that. And it
Yeah.
was an interesting take because I'd never heard that exact opinion before, but because TNG is so episodic, there's some validity to that, right?
I
What
don't
would you
know.
say?
I see the validity in that, but I think in The Measure of a Man, which is a fantastic episode, but wouldn't it lose a little bit of its emotional impact without having the feeling of knowing Data from those previous
True.
episodes?
Yeah.
I just don't know. I feel like you'd be kind of like shooting
Yeah.
yourself in the foot with that one in some
do-
ways.
Yeah,
It
I
would
do
be like
worry
the
that
third or
you lose some of the the gravitas of some of those moments in Measure of a Man if you don't already kind of appreciate Data.
That's true. I think by that point there's two. It's a two-parter with Encounter at Farpoint, and then I think he had said 1 or 2 episodes specifically in season 1, and then to skip. I wish I'd
depending on
written
which
them
those
down,
episodes
but-
are, you could potentially get away with it. And in
Yeah.
fact, I think it was actually a friend of the podcast, Saul, or Nullpoint, who originally said that he would wait for you and I to produce that curated list that we joked about forever ago.
Ah, yes, a
of,
curated
our
list.
favorite TNG DS9 episodes. I don't think we were including other series at that point.
Oh, now see, it's weird with TNG because I feel like that would be possible. I feel like I could do that. I could have
DS9
you
you
skip.
can't really get away with. it.
DS9 would kill me. Even a single episode would break my heart if you skipped an episode in DS9. I guess I have that holds such a special place for me.
I
in
do agree. I think
space-time.
we'll be back when we were talking about this. We were just talking about listing our favorite episodes, and then it slowly
yeah.
evolved in this idea of a curated list for someone getting into it.
But it's a genius idea, especially for like we should actually do this. We should sit. I mean, obviously off stream, but we should sit down, hammer out like our night shift approved way for a brand new person to get into Star Trek, the one that we agree upon, which could include any amount of series and episodes and all of that. But
we're going to be able to agree on
sit
this.
down.
Well, we can have tiers.
This is totally different. This is like, it's so interesting because, the reason why I asked the question to begin with is because I wanted to see what all the Trekkies' opinions were in regards to how they would get into Star Trek first and foremost. But I think we're leaving out a pretty big component too. I actually recommend to watch Star Trek with your family and friends first. I think watching it by yourself might kind of deteriorate a little bit of the experience because you're jumping into Star Trek, but you're kind of jumping in by yourself, and you're like, okay, everyone's telling me that I gotta watch this. What's so great about it? And you're experiencing it by yourself if you're watching it by yourself. But I feel like, when we're watching Star Trek, and for everyone that's in the chat here, whoever wants to do watch parties and so forth like that, that's why I think that's the beauty of what technology is today too as well, because we can have these watch parties from people just across many provinces and countries away where we can actually experience Star Trek together. So I feel like, if we were going to curate anything or recommend anything in Star Trek, the one thing that I feel is really cool is that it's sort of a family show too as well, and it brings everyone together. So I think watching it together is an important key component of why, getting into Star Trek too, because then you kind of look at it and I brought this example before with my dad, who's a big Trekkie. He would react to certain things in Star Trek when I was younger. Obviously, I wouldn't really know what it is, but being influenced by his reactions, I would be like, "Oh, that is pretty cool," or you know what I mean? Like or I wouldn't understand certain things unless he elaborated a little bit more of it. And I think that's what the beauty of Star Trek really is that there's so many things that you can take away from. But I also think that watching it, with your closest friends and family that are recommending for you to get into it is a really good thing to do. So I think that's
a really good point, Justin. I totally agree with you because I was just thinking back on when I was watching Star Trek and when I was young and I was watching the original series with my parents. We would talk about what happened during the episode after the episode, and then when I started watching more modern Trek with Marek, we would talk about what happened in the episode, maybe even in the middle of the episode or definitely at the end, and we would have these like discussions on something poignant that happened or something that like sparks some sort of like philosophical concept. And I think without that, you're absolutely right, Justin. Like I agree with you 100%.
So wouldn't you say that in a way that sort of goes back to what I'd said about trying to recreate the experience that you had that made Star Trek so special to the new person who's getting into it, right? Because I think a lot of us, when we sit down, because we're so into Star Trek now, and we've talked with so many different people, we got a podcast and we're doing streams and everything. We've had a lot of these conversations, and I think we have a decent sample size of people saying how they got into Star Trek and what's sort of like what I recently did I joined like another Star Trek Discord, and I wrote like an introduction about myself, and I looked up through all the other intros. It was almost universal, dude. It's so fascinating to me what a family experience it is. I think especially for people of like our generation who grew up in that golden era of Trek, right? Like TNG, DS9, Voyager. When that was happening, that was the era of like TV dinner time. You know what I mean? Like people were sitting down as a family watching something on TV, and Star Trek was such a family show. It really brought whole families together to sit and experience this together. And what you said is awesome, and it's totally true. I remember having like amazing conversations after an episode. Like, how do you what do you think about that? Like, because that's especially as a young person watching Star Trek, some of the episodes are so interesting and poignant that they really open your brain in a way to think a thought that you've never thought before. You know what I mean? How many episodes can you think of that did that? Like there's a ton that you're like, oh my God, that's wild. And that episode sits with you forever. But I remember having awesome conversations with my family sort of about that. And still to this day, I could pull out episodes where I'm like, every time I watch that episode, I feel slightly different about it. Like I have a desire to talk with someone about it because, oh my God, like I'll give you an example. Deep Space Nine, when they go to the planet and they crash and they accidentally spawn an entire society because they were stranded on the planet, and they have generations and generations and generations of descendants, and then they crash again and they have to leave, right? And there's the Odo thing. Like every time I watch that episode, I feel like slightly differently about how that is and how that's done. And I remember having such a great talk with like my mom about that. And then, you know, every time I watch it, I'm like, I want to, even if Jennifer's not watching it with me, I want to grab her and be like, I had a new thought about this and I need to talk about it. You know, it's such a cool thing with Star Trek in that way.
Well, because Star Trek really presents to you these ethical and moral dilemmas that are very few other shows teach you. Very few other shows really present to you in the same way. It's really fascinating. I remember my dad actually, when he used to teach English, he even brought in some of the original series. This was many years ago.
Oh my God, to his classroom.
Classroom to talk about some of these concepts, because you know you don't get this in that much of other modern media. But I would put Star Trek up against, like, you know, the great classics of literature. You can have those same discussions after watching some of these episodes.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think some of the episodes are that poignant. I would also like to bring up the fact that someone found us. We have someone here. Nice.
Oh,
Dude, that is
hi.
awesome.
We
That
are
is
in
awesome.
Earth space. Oh, there they went.
They're gone. Oh.
Oh, they're gone.
We're in ESD number
Unfortunate.
14,
Saw them
guys.
for a second, though.
Number 14.
Before I risk us moving on, I just want to chime in, as I also, as many of you know, grew up watching Next Generation with my dad, my aunt, my grandma, my grandpa.
Oh yeah.
Loved it, and like many of you, had discussions afterwards, and it like was thought provoking. And even as a young kid who didn't understand some of the complex topics being explored, it was just still kind of cool to even hear like my grandpa and my dad like going back and forth about stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I do think, and since we're talking about how to introduce someone that we are trying to convince to try out Star Trek, I do think if you're making a recommendation, it is going to be massively helped if you can watch it with them and talk about it and whatever. And because not only that, you'll share your enthusiasm, which in case they're not immediately hooked, could carry them through some of like the lower episodes of like season 1 TNG. But I do want to defend, as someone who, especially during the pandemic and whatnot, watched a lot of Star Trek by myself. These teachable moments and stuff are still incredibly poignant if you just kind of sit down and reflect on them afterwards, even if you don't have like a discussion about it. So anyone watching this who doesn't have someone to watch with, one, you could come join us and watch it. Or two,
Good shout out. Yes.
don't feel bad if you're trying to like get something out of this watching it by yourself, because I think these episodes are still so moving, many of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, by the way, and it's true. In the Night Shift Discord server, we actually do like watch parties all the time on a daily basis.
What is our link
Yeah.
again?
It is discord.gg/Star Trek Night Shift. We have a vanity URL, so just type that in. Come join us. We watch this all the time. And I love that we're talking about this because someone in chat at this very moment, we have a couple of friends right now who we are actively trying to get into Star Trek. Like I said, we are sort of a community that's come from like an online gaming community and have moved into Star Trek. Maple Mesmer right there, we're trying really hard to get her into Star Trek. She's had an interesting take on this because I think she decided with Jennifer that the idea would be to go back and start from the beginning, the original series at the beginning of that show. To which I had my arms up in the air, screaming, jumping up and down, trying to suggest anything other than that because I'm so afraid. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten someone new that I know, that I like, who is smart and awesome, and they have just not followed a path that worked for them into Star Trek, and they write it off. They're like, it's not for me. And it's so sad because it's so hard to get those people back. It's tough. Like once they've made that decision, it's challenging because there's so much good Trek out there. It's such a waste if they end up having a rough time. But Mabel has been awesome because she's been watching it and looking up trivia as she's watching it. Justin, who's very knowledgeable in Star Trek, been a Star Trek fan his entire life here, Commander Justin, he also has not had that much of an exposure to the original series, so we're sort of like all getting an experience out of that as we watch it. We'll be watching some episodes after the podcast tonight, actually.
Yes.
So,
Well, how much of
it's
a
kind of cool.
difference-
This is a close thing to us.
Right? How much of a difference did that make when we were actually watching it together with her, though, right? And it's
Oh, yeah,
crazy
super
because
fun.
like we got to see Maple like spit out facts we didn't even know, and you guys have been exposed to TOS already. So it's insane how much he was able to like dig up, and it's so fun watching with you guys. So I mean, I encourage anyone that's in the chat, we're always around to to watch shows and do watch parties of Star Trek. I mean, heck, I'm just gonna put Merrick here in exposure.
Uh-oh.
He loves to watch Star Trek when he eats, so throws up Voyager, and boom, you have a watch party.
I do.
Impromptu watch party that everyone's tuning in to watch Voyager. So I mean,
We are also
it's-
at
it's
We
a
all
may
great
have been
there.
episode.
late tonight because we were doing that. That is possible. That's,
Yeah, sorry about that.
Just-
That's exactly what it is. So, I mean, or I mean, even better yet, if you want to get exposure into playing the game, I mean, we're always in there too. For these past few, so like we're
Literally
always
right
there.
now.
literally at
right
this
now.
moment.
Oh yeah.
This is the four of us right here in
This
Earth
is-
Space Dock number 14.
This is, by the way, not highlighting exciting gameplay.
Oh right, no, this is
No,
just
but
a.
beautiful gameplay. Can
But
everybody
it's-
look at this? Star Trek Online, shout out, man, to like this
Right?
12-year-old
The
game.
Cryptic Studios, yes.
Yeah, because holy crap, the Lighting 2.0 brought this game to life.
And
it
the
is
ambiance
gorgeous.
is important. You know, just because this isn't specifically an episode, a story, right here. You know, just the fact that they have created certain areas like this to sort of experience what it might feel like to be in Star Trek. I think this is wonderful. I love when games actually do this and they give you places where you can just kind of feel like you're there.
Look, can you look over there, up above? You see all the people walking, the silhouettes that are just walking by on those hallways up there? That's the kind of detail I just love. Like, how cool is that? Do you really get like an idea of the size
Wow,
and
I
scope
never
of
noticed
this?
that before.
Isn't that awesome, though? It's so cool.
Yeah.
Guys, we just got a
Incredible.
live subscriber. Let's go. What's up,
Oh,
Glitch?
Glitch in chat says this is great to
Glitch.
see. Been here since day one, still playing.
Oh,
You've
how
been
cool
playing
is
Star Trek
that?
Online since day one. That's amazing.
So, I mean, obviously, this stream, we're just brand new. To anyone who's watching this podcast number 2, we're like literally brand new at this, so we're hoping to reach a broader Star Trek audience soon. But just for anyone who's here who ends up seeing this ever, this is another element that has just become incredibly important to me and my experience of the Star Trek universe is Star Trek Online. No joke, it is not just sort of some sort of small side mobile experience. This has paralleled every bit of my love for this IP, for the franchise as a whole. I feel like Star Trek Online has been going on for so long and in so much depth, in tandem with plot lines that have started it back in TOS all the way to the newest treks that are out now. They literally fill in gaps for all of that. To me, the experiences and the story in Star Trek Online is intrinsically attached to the actual canon that has happened in the franchise. And it is such the best way to be able to experience the universe of Star Trek with other people, with friends. There's just no better way to do it, man. You can sit on message boards and talk about how much you love Trek, or you can fly in ships together, designing your perfect experience in the universe of Star Trek and do it as a group. If you're a Trekkie and you're not playing Star Trek Online, I promise you it is going to tenfold increase your experience in this entire amazing franchise that has changed our lives forever. I mean, it's so good. It really is amazing.
And come play with us. 'Cause, I mean, we're always
We're
around.
recruiting, by the
Like
way.
we're recruiting. We're always around, and I gotta say, like I've played Star Trek just like Glitch here, who's been here day one. I've been playing with my dad for the longest time, and you know, having to experience that with all of you guys now. My gosh, there's so many things going into the story, going into the builds. I can stay up till 7 o'clock in the morning. We just
And has.
playing with you guys.
And have. I was
And
going to
we-
say,
and we-
we're pretty
and we
bad.
have-
There's
it's
a reason why we're
crazy.
called the night shift, okay?
Yeah, that's the reason why we're called the night shift. Yeah, 100%. But
Oh, man.
I love it so much. It's such an experience.
It is.
So many things, even in the very beginning of the story of when you start playing Star Trek Online, like just the cinematics alone, including all of your friends and family or whoever you're in a party with. Oh my goodness! Like I'm like, wow, they've really took this attention to detail.
To an
And it's
extreme.
incredible.
Oh man, I
right?
remember how
Yeah.
pumped we were when we played our first Let's Play, and all 4 of us were in that very first cutscene.
All in the cutscene
Yeah.
making facial expressions. It was when
Yeah.
Right?
it was when the Undine, right? The ambassador, and I forgot his name. The ambassador Sompek?
Soketh?
Something?
Soketh?
Soketh?
Again with an
The,
S. We're
It's close. It's something like that. So basically, he eventually exposes himself as an Undine, and species A472, and then it sort of cuts to all of our characters zooming in, and we all make
Going
this
like, huh?
Yeah.
it's just so great to
The
see
facial
yourself in
expressions
that.
are great. Yeah.
Yes, but I really think the best part of it, though, and this is what I always try to shout out when I'm talking about STO, is that for, 12 years, like for so long of STO existing, basically almost its entire lifespan up until just the last couple of years, it's been driving off of pre-existing content with nothing new, right? Like whenever there's something new, they get really excited, they get to act on it, add something new and awesome. But they have had so many years of being able to go back, comb through all of the coolest episodes and movies, plot points of Star Trek in general, find those little mysteries, those little question marks at the end of episodes where you're like, they never follow up on that. Like, how interesting is that story? But it's a mystery. We don't really know. Star Trek Online does. They go back, they grab those moments, they'll do entire story bits about it, missions, plots, voice actors from the show, and they'll bring it to life in a way that's what I'm saying. Like when I see these things now, dude, okay, so when I go watch TNG, that the conspiracy episode where there's these little bugs, right? And they take over people's minds.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the very end, right,
Oh.
they defeat them all. It's all destroyed.
Yeah.
What's the last scene? The last scene is that they had sent a message out into deep space, contacting with information about where this was, where they were. Who were they contacting? We don't know. And they never say it
And they
again.
just brushed it off, yeah.
But when I finished that episode, I'm like, the Iconians, because I know that's what that is, because they're connected in Star Trek Online. To me, it's real, and STO has made it so. And I just love that they do that stuff, man. It's so cool.
They made it so. I see you.
I
Make
see
it so,
that,
bro.
yep.
Nice. I see what you did there. Nice.
Yeah, it's
I
big,
wanna-
dude.
Yeah, I want to take acknowledgement too for Star Trek Online for doing such a really great job for immortalizing people that have passed away that have been
Oh,
such
don't
an
you love that?
important figure of Star Trek
Yes.
too, right? Like
Oh,
Nichelle
God,
Nichols,
yes.
she's in there behind the mezzanine where we're sitting right now. Is actually
another-
where-
oh, that's- I see
there's,
it.
There's one over there, yeah.
The
And
tribute.
It's so great to see that. Yeah, it's absolutely great to see that.
Did you just get disconnected, Mary?
I did.
I did
Oh, you did too. I bet it's because we didn't move.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's probably because we didn't move. Oh, yeah, it's because we didn't move.
Oh, it said NG got logged.
We can log back in.
Yeah, I can log back.
Oh,
in.
we're not gonna
I guess we
get
have to
sitting
stretch our legs a little bit, huh? In the game,
That is hilarious. There we go. Okay, logging back in.
right?
No, I
once you log back
love
in,
that.
you can
First of
take a
all,
look at it, right?
people should know how many actors that are in STO. Like, there are people who are like part of the Star Trek family, right? And I think that is the only word to use, because anyone who's ever even peripherally involved in the universe of Star Trek, the IP of Star Trek, they are immortalized forever by the fans. The fandom of Star Trek is something so special, and has been for the last 56 years, that I think just absolutely dwarfs anything else. I don't care who you are. I know that there's huge Marvel fans out there. I know that there are enormous Star Wars fans out there, but Star Trek is the reason why we have Comic-Con. Like, literally, like conventions, nerd gatherings, right? I mean, it is Star Trek. It has had such an impact, and anyone who's ever been involved is treated with such respect. If you go on to be a movie star and you don't need Star Trek anymore, fine. We're going to love you from a distance. If your career doesn't take off and that's the biggest thing you ever did, Star Trek takes care of you for the rest of your life. All you got, like, you run the convention circuit, go and do like the cruises, whatever it is. You go back to your house living like a normal life as like a minor celebrity for most of the year. Then you go to these conventions and you are just a king or queen among men. It's an amazing thing. And one of the most special things is STO, because there's a lot of people that did a lot of character voice acting in STO that sadly are no longer with us, right? I'm thinking, so Jimmy Doohan was not in this, but his son voices his character, which I just love and adore. Rene Auberjonois, right? He as Odo. He's passed away. He did Odo in this game just before he passed away. The same is true of Aaron Eisenberg. We lost two DS9 legends so close to each other back to back. But Nog also loved STO. Nog was a great dude. I remember him making like statements that were like trying to get people to play Ferengi in STO, because he was such a great guy, and he loved. There are certain people that just love the franchise, and Aaron Eisenberg, totally one of them. I love and adore and miss that man. He's one of the sweetest guys ever. And so there are, and of course Leonard Nimoy, the absolute pinnacle of all things Star Trek. All these people have done roles in this game and they're going to be gone forever. Like, they're immortalized here and treated with such respect. There's literally, when Leonard Nimoy died, they put on this enormous farewell to him on Vulcan. Did anyone go to that?
Yeah.
There's a giant statue and a farewell to him, basically, which is beautiful. I just love this kind of fandom stuff.
First
man.
mission.
Yeah.
Yeah. First mission.
I'm
you can
in
definitely go there.
ESD number 10, by the way. Are you guys in different ones?
Yeah, we are.
We're all in the same one now.
Oh,
okay,
I went into 10. I'm going up. I'm going to try to find it.
Wait, oh no.
Now,
Which
now
one
we're
are you
split.
in?
We're in 8.
You're an 8.
I'm going to go to 8. Let's go to 8. No, wait.
Yeah.
Is it full? No, let's go to 8. Glitch says, I love the Iconians. Love that. Dude, the
Right?
Iconians, just by their very name is a mystery in Star Trek, right? They barely touch that. They barely scrape any of the story with Iconia and Iconians in Star Trek, except that it is this weird mystery thread, which is mentioned in multiple Star Treks that never really gets to be fleshed out. It was the ultimate plaything for STO, right? There's what a great plot point for them to grab onto, because not only did they get to expand, explore, and tell one of the single greatest stories in all of STO.
I was going
Right?
to say, the
Anyone get
storyline
back
for the
on that?
Iconians is amazing.
Yeah.
It's the best. And they get to take that and they thread all of these different, loose strings up into the same event with Iconians. I think they deserve accolades for this. It's one of the greatest things that I've seen in an MMO storytelling. Just phenomenal, right, Glitch? It's so good, man. These guys, Star Trek does not get the credit it deserves as an MMO. But everyone who's a Star Trek fan, I think, who finds a home here, they will never leave. Like, this game is just beloved, I think, by a lot of the people who are true Star Trek fans, which, we all are. I'm never going to stop playing this game. So,
Right?
Yeah, I can't because I bought the lifetime subscription. So.
Yes, same.
Yeah.
And Chief Jennifer's getting it next.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah.
For Christmas,
Poor-
probably.
Poor Chief Jennifer.
Let's go.
I
Gosh.
had a follow up to the Iconian thing, but I forgot what it was.
Yeah, I love all the stories that are,
I'm not
that are
sitting down.
encompassed in the.
Standard here.
I know I sat on you, dude. It was totally my bad. But yeah, I love all the stories. I mean, looking at it now, I mean, if you're seeing the trailers right now too as well, I mean, who just got like included in there, right? Who looks absolutely amazing at 50. And who am I talking about, guys?
Wesley Crusher.
Right?
Will
Like,
Wheaton?
Will Wheaton?
Yes, Will
Oh
Wheaton.
my god. Absolutely just amazing, man. I'm so glad to see him back in it, so.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, I haven't.
That could be
don't
the next
spoil it for me.
topic.
I haven't played any of that yet.
I haven't
Neither
either.
have I.
No.
Neither have I.
We're
I've just seen
working
the
our way
trailer.
through the story. In fact,
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
who's watching this now or in the future, we are actually streaming our whole Let's Play of the story as 4 of us, just like this, 4 webcams, 4 new characters going through the story. We're currently at Nimbus 3, just to kind of get like our real experience going through the plot of this game from beginning to end. And it's streamed every Thursday after our Lower Decks watch party. So we're going to upload those on YouTube soon. But if you want to come watch us live, it's every Thursday. And we would love you guys to stop by. It's actually awesome.
Yeah, and for me, it's really well. Like I said, I'd never been through the Nimbus 3 storyline because when I didn't start playing until just like 9 months ago, and so for me, it's mostly either my second or first playthrough of all the story parts. So that's kind of exciting.
I mean, it's really cool too, because like when you go into it, I don't think a lot of people will know about it unless you sort of had past experience. But I think the coolest thing about it is that like that particular mission or that particular series, is kind of that mission is granted to you by someone from Section 31, which I think is pretty cool to have it offside, which is
Yeah.
sort of like
Which it
it's
didn't
a
used
whole
to be.
thing that it was never
Yeah.
really a thing unless you knew, right?
Mhm.
So that's pretty cool how they were able to incorporate it in there. Because I know that if you were to go through progression of the story, you wouldn't necessarily get the full-on experience unless you've experienced what it was like in Nimbus first. So I thought that was really cool that they were able to incorporate that and then have that little touch in there. So
I mean, they put a lot of love into that whole area, man. So for those
Yeah.
of you who may not remember, Nimbus 3 is the planet of galactic peace from Star Trek 5, the Final Frontier. It's basically like this dusty, failed experiment of peace. It's where the cat dancer is. You might remember that
yes.
episode or that moment in that series. I think that sticks out to most people. But they did a really good job of that. I think that's what Star Trek Online does so well. They'll grab something and really put like love and affection into the rendition of whatever that is, which is really good. But
Yeah.
I just want to say, as a throw out to Wesley, he is such a. I actually just read an article calling him the single most polarizing or divisive, even worse, divisive character in all of Trek, because there are so many people that dislike Wesley Crusher, who dislike Will Wheaton. And I think that is such a shame. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't want to put words in the mouths of anyone else here, even in the night shift. I know there's a lot of people that hate Wesley Crusher. But I need to give my own take on this, because when I was watching it back then, back in that golden era, I was a kid. I was very young. I never found Wesley to be annoying while he was on the series. Now, I did not particularly enjoy him leaving the series when he left the series. Not the fact that he did leave, but how they wrote him to leave, I thought was unfortunate. I think it should have given him like a bigger, better, cooler send off. It was very mysterious. And of course, we actually got to see a throwback to that mystery in Picard season 2, which was really interesting. But for me, he did exactly what Gene Roddenberry wanted. Do you know that this was like a contentious issue? Gene wanted a kid on the show because he wanted it to be a family experience. He wanted children to feel like this was their show too, and they specifically wanted someone like that on the ship. And the producers were against it. He fought for Wesley Crusher. And a lot of people, I think, would say that it was kind of a failure, but it literally, the exact thing that he wanted was what happened to me. I felt like Wesley was everything I wanted to be. He was on the bridge of the Enterprise. He was super smart and being rewarded for being studious and intelligent. He was in the middle of the action. He literally saves the ship in season 1 at the very beginning. The repulsor beam during the drunk episode, right? The naked time or whatever it is. That from the very beginning, he was there making big changes like that. And I just thought that was so awesome. And since then, it's easy to maybe like roll your eyes at some instances of Wesley Crusher's influence, but like Will Wheaton has never shied away from being Mr. Star Trek, man. The guy is, not only was he representing me as a kid, right? Being on the bridge of the Enterprise and loving every second of it. That was what I would have wanted to be. But literally as an adult, he's represented me too. He represents me as a giant fan, a giant nerd, someone who really appreciates every aspect of Star Trek and still makes it his life as of today. That's like literally, he's always been that guy for me. So Will Wheaton, you don't shut up, okay? You just... Don't shut up, Wesley.
I'd heard that he was kind of polarizing, but I actually didn't have such a strong attachment to the character of Wesley Crusher, but I've always had a lot of respect for Will Wheaton, the person, the actor. I mean, he's done much more than just acting, but like, I've just always really thought his attitude was very cool, and I like some of the hosting he's done.
Yeah. When he hosts, right? When he does the podcast, do you not feel the love and enthusiasm for everything he's talking about? I mean, he's a fan.
Yeah.
I love that, man. This is the same reason why Daddy Anson Mount, okay, just like the absolute legend that he is like endearing himself more and more to us, the fans, as time goes by, because he's a fan. He's a fan, man. Yeah. He's literally a captain living the dream. Like, he's saying all the things that we would say if we got to be captain of the Enterprise. Like, he wakes up and feels so lucky that he gets to be Captain Pike. I mean, the last thing you want is somebody who gets to live this amazing dream and then sort of rolls their eyes at it. You know how like actors feel so... This is a thing in Hollywood, by the way. Actors are a part of these big franchises and they're like, I never even watched the episodes. Never even seen it. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. That is like, and you can tell when they say it in their own circles of actors. That's cool. Literally, like, that's cool. It's uncool to be like a fan of the stuff that you're in and be very knowledgeable about it. That to me is crazy. And I love the people who represent the fandom inside the IP that the fandom is based on. And I think people like Will Wheaton and Anson Mount, these guys are amazing. I love that.
It's crazy because you see Will Wheaton, and the reason why I love him so much is because we got to watch him grow up on TNG. You know, we got to see him make mistakes, and when he made those mistakes, and you saw Picard giving him that lecture, damn, I felt that. I felt that because as someone of that age,
the First Duty episode.
Yeah. When he did when he pulled off the maneuver and getting influenced by his friends and his comrades and stuff too.
That was an excellent episode, by the way.
Yeah, and then you look back at that.
What a bully, Nick Lucario.
Yeah, you reflect on that, and you're like, same. You know, like I've
Yeah.
been in a situation like that before.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
Don't
so
you think that's
heavily
so
influenced by
relatable?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I've had my dad lecture me like very, very similarly to what Picard does, you know. And it's crazy because like with TNG, and the reason why, even going back to what we were pointing out earlier about it being one of the foundations of what you would start on.
Yeah.
I remember specifically when I got into one of my first career jobs, and I was having so much anxiety to perform really well. I wanted to I was a perfectionist, and that was something that I was always striving to do. And then my dad pulled a quote from Jean-Luc Picard. He goes, "It is possible to commit no mistakes and still
And
lose."
still
That is
lose.
such a good
Oh,
That is life.
it is
Yeah.
such a good quote. Are you kidding
so
me? I could
I took
write that
that.
on a
Yeah.
wall, dude.
That is so
Yeah.
many facts
Yes.
right there.
Yeah, and like that just hits me so hard.
Quiz,
You
pop
just,
quiz. Do you
yeah.
guys know the episode?
Oh, my trivia
Yes.
game.
Well,
is
I don't know the name of it, but I can tell you what happened.
But you know that it's the Stratagema episode.
Yes, with the Zach.
With the Zakdorn. Yes, dude. So
Poor
good.
Data having such like a meltdown over
Yeah.
being able to win.
Oh, but like that
was
is
great, though.
so iconic for Data. It's
Yeah.
such an excellent, because as we all know, Data is absolutely more than the sum of his parts. He spends the entire series, it's just like Spock. He talks about how emotions are terrible, and yet he's so emotional, he just can't see it. There's so much is true with Data. Like he's always like, I cannot feel feelings, but we know he's a little bit more. Maybe not human, right? But he's a little bit more than the sum of his parts. And that episode nails that in so strongly. Like that's one of the episodes that really gives that to you. He was weirdly bruised and he needed a pep talk to get out of that, and yet is still Data. Like that nuance, if he was literally played as a robot, it would not be anything at all. He has to be Pinocchio, right? Which is, he wants to be a real boy.
Yeah.
I do want to shout out what Glitch said. He said, okay, so at the end of season 2 Picard, when Traveler Wesley Crusher, love that you capitalized all that, was speaking to to Sung, yeah, and then why does Will Wheaton look like he just stepped off the set of The Big Bang Theory? He's wearing those clothes. Absolutely brilliant. You are so right about that. It is such a fun, and he comes off so casual and jovial. It's such a juxtaposition to like the rest of the show. Everybody's sort of like laughed or rolled their eyes or groaned even when that scene happened. I loved every second of that. It was such an interesting, cool callback to him and to not just Wesley Crusher. Didn't it just feel like Will Wheaton stepped onto the set? He's just Will Wheaton now.
Yeah.
Like he's like, he doesn't even know how to play Wesley Crusher because he is Will Wheaton in that show.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It's so good.
I love that.
Angie says, then he makes the Zakdorn tantrum by no selling him. Yes.
In other words,
he
I beat him up.
busted him up.
Busted him up. Ah, damn. I was so close.
It was close. No, but he basically didn't pursue victory, right? He just was aiming for a standoff, and it pissed off the Zakdorn so much. Kolrami, I think was his name.
Yep.
He was so frustrated that he ended up throwing the match. But that's what I mean. I was just telling Justin about this earlier. I have such a fondness for like the early seasons of TNG. They had a specific feeling that, yeah, not all the episodes were gold, but there's such a nostalgia and shaping those characters, because that's what makes Star Trek, in my opinion, is the casting and the characters. Character development is key, and those episodes, especially back then when they're like literally defining these characters that we're gonna love 40 years later, so good. And that's one of my favorites, actually. Oh my God, what was the line? One of my favorite lines from Riker ever. He goes, "Just remember, Enterprise, Captain Riker's never lost."
Oh yeah.
So good,
Yeah.
because he's going over to the other ship. Oh man, it's amazing.
I do like. Do you remember someone a while back sent us or posted the like a newspaper clipping from like right when TNG came out? And
yes.
it was like, oh, this is gonna be bad, blah blah blah.
Oh my God,
favorite
yes.
thing was in
Yeah.
that article. One of the comments they made was like, the charm of the original series was how well the characters got along, or like how well the characters went together, and blah blah blah. And it turns out
Yeah.
they were totally wrong, because I think TNG nailed it as well.
Yeah.
Oh, above and beyond. One
Yeah.
would argue more so. And oh my God, am I
100%.
so glad.
No,
that we're
but
talking
what
about
they're
this.
talking about with the original series is those scenes where Spock and Bones and Kirk are just sitting around, and it's like that very specific, like little joke at the end to wrap up of the episode, and they're all laughing, and like that feeling, like sort of encapsulated. And it's true that it's very like specific and it's a very short period of time, but for that time period in the 60s, they were coming off of the 50s television sitcoms, and this was just like
It had that vibe.
It had
Yeah.
that vibe, and you saw that, and you just loved when they made jokes and laughed at each other's jokes, or like looked at Spock like, oh, he's the weird one, you know? Like people loved that, and I remember loving that when I was a kid too.
It's such a wrap up from like a sitcom. You're right. It's the family sitcom closure. That is so, like essential to the episodic television experience, right? So we open the set as something brand new. It's another day. Whatever happened yesterday is gone completely. We open with some interesting, cool dynamic, and at the very end of the episode, we're like wrap it up with some little quip, ha ha ha, and then like the audience laughs, and then we close the set, and it opens again the next day. It's such a specific, tangible feeling of that kind of thing. And I know that people that were watching television back then who were so accustomed to that and so appreciative of that dynamic really feel like that's exactly what they were. They were like their family that they saw on the couch every week, even though it was such a, you know, a bizarre sci-fi experience. Really, really iconic, I think, for that particular thing.
TNG was the family for me, man. Like that was the
Absolutely.
one that I was like, I want to be a part of that. And you can tell, like you could tell that they were having such a great time. You know, some of the greatest things that I loved about TNG too is their blooper reels, dude. Their blooper reels are hilarious.
The blooper reels
Like
are
you're just
really,
like,
really
oh
fun.
my
Oh God! If you guys haven't seen those, the bloopers for Star Trek, especially TNG,
Yeah,
are
dude.
gold, dude. They're so funny. They're laugh out loud
the greatest
funny.
memes. Some of the greatest memes.
Yeah,
There's some of the greatest
so
memes
true.
in there, you know, like it's so great to see because you could really tell that they were a family, and you know you hear it in all the video conventions too as well. Everything that you go through or that you experience through what you see online, they talk so highly amongst each other and how much of their families, and you know they've watched their kids grow up. You know they've been through all their weddings and stuff. I think that's incredible. You know,
Oh,
that
yeah.
they get to experience all that stuff. They have that chemistry on camera, off camera. That's so cool to have. You know, you always want to be a part of that. So
almost. Yeah, dude. Of
Yeah.
course, you want to be a part of that. I think that's what. And we've talked about this before, but I think that's an actually awesome topic to talk about with the podcast. Is that the everybody I think who's in the Trek fandom sort of has at least a passing awareness that there was some drama in TOS, right? Like a lot of the character or a lot of the actors, while they were really close to each other on set, or like the characters were, the actual actors themselves, maybe not so much. And I think that was a really hard thing for people to acknowledge later in the years of Star Trek. We saw it sort of get kind of nasty. I know we all know that William Shatner had like a really complicated relationship, shall we say, with Star Trek in general, like the entire franchise, not even just his co-stars, but literally Star Trek. We watched him do a series of documentaries. I think that he literally, if you guys haven't seen those, they're fascinating. The sort of evolution of his experience with Star Trek. And I know that he's a businessman, right? So I know he commercialized this experience. I know he set out to like make a documentary starting with him explaining the fact that Star Trek has always been very complicated for him and why he's not always been a big fan, and then sort of like going through the evolution throughout the documentary, and then coming at the end of the documentary to acknowledge Star Trek as one of the greatest things in his life, and then finishes it with going to a Star Trek convention, which he did not do for like 30 years or something ridiculous, like really long. He was just not a part of that at all. And so I think as fans, we want it to be real. Like I know Justin just said, like, they're a family and I want to be a part of that, right? This is such a big, iconic experience for me as a Star Trek fanatic, is that when you watch these people day in and day out, they really are a family. The relationships are what Star Trek is all about, and you would like to be a part of that. At the end of all those episodes, you're like, I love these guys. I love these guys so much. Like, I wish I was a part of this family. And then I think whether you're conscious of it or not, I'll just speak for myself. I want that to be real, or as real as it can be behind the camera too. I'd love to think that these guys that I got to watch 7 years of their relationships, forming and blooming and all this stuff, to think that they had that same experience off camera. I don't think that that's crazy to think that a lot of fans wished that the fandom that they're into of any stripe is as real as it could be, right? But what we end up finding out, I think, with TOS is that it wasn't really the case. Without harping on that too much, one of the coolest things is how much of the case that is for TNG, which I think Justin was alluding to just now. They are such best friends, and they've been around for forever. They like teasing each other, doing impressions of each other. They do the convention circuit forever. Sir Patrick Stewart went on to do bigger and better things, right? I mean, he's definitely done like big movie star stuff, but he always comes back for all of the Star Trek stuff. He never grew too big for Star Trek. He knows what that is. It's important to all of them. And I really love that. I love that. It affects my appreciation for them in the show, I think.
I have to toss in here just because I don't want my show to get overlooked, but the Voyager cast was a lot like that too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, and it's
God,
easy to
yes.
see, right? Like you can kind of feel it when you watch, and that's part of I think what made Voyager one of my favorite series. And again, I always say like it's really hard for me to pick a favorite because my favorite's usually the one I'm watching in that moment,
Voyager.
with
I
a
know
few
you
exceptions. But I do love Voyager so much, and you're right. It does have that feel. It really harkens back to. I don't know. It's very much also like a modern day original series in some ways. That's what I thought when I first watched it.
A lot of people make connections between Janeway and Kirk. A lot of people do.
I felt that when I started watching Voyager, I was like, oh my God, this has such an original series vibe in this certain way. And I think it's just because where they are in so far from home, she's able to do more rash things and make these rash decisions kind of like Kirk did back in the day.
I need to toss out the recommendation. I haven't found a ton of these videos. Like, I think it's been easier to find TNG bloopers, but the couple Voyager blooper videos I found have been hysterical.
Yeah.
I have a memory of Tim Russ farting.
What?
Oh, what?
No, seriously. I think he was gassy on set. There's some sort of memory I have of it. Sorry, Tim
And there's
Russ.
a blooper?
Yeah, there's at least one blooper, but they have made comments about it before.
Because I remember I read
now you're gonna find it.
What got me searching for these blooper videos was a while back. I read an interview with Kate Mulgrew, just general fan interview, and she was talking about how many pranks, what she called her boys, because that was what she referred to like the bridge crew as, would pull on set to the point where it was sometimes disruptive, but it always made her laugh.
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely. I think there's and I think with Janeway, there's more of this than any other captain because she's really talked about it. She was the first woman captain. And I think especially in the 90s, that was like a harder sell. She had to somehow be a woman and also a captain at the same time. But there's this feeling like you need to actually captain the ship, not just on set or not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera too. One of my favorite stories ever, and he's told it a billion times. You guys probably have heard this, is Patrick Stewart has talked about his first couple of years on the season, on the series. He was a stick in the mud, right? For lack of a better term, he was a Royal Shakespearean actor, and he came to do this silly sci-fi show, which was absolutely guaranteed to be a failure. I mean, no one thought this was going to go well, because even the fan base that was for Star Trek already, they were the ones most vehemently against it, right? That's what, so like they didn't have a guaranteed fandom in place. It was the opposite. But he was constantly admonishing his crewmates. He was like, we need to take this seriously. You guys are laughing and joking, and this is acting and an art and a job. And he'd yell at them. They all tell this story. And to this day, when Patrick Stewart tells this story, he has sometimes teared up because he said that his Star Trek family taught him, not the other way around. They taught him that it is possible to have the most fun with your favorite people in the world every day in the office and do some of the best work you've ever done at the same time. And I love hearing him tell that story because I have heard it several times, and it's so awesome because it changed him forever. You can tell. I mean, he's a great, loose, fun guy, and he was not before Star Trek. And I like that with Kate Mulgrew because, like you said, I mean, it's the same kind of thing, right? She's the captain. She really had to go in there with, straight backed and professional as hell. She had to sell it to the studio, to herself. She tells the story about like having 40 men in suits every day standing there on the set, watching her do her lines, waiting for her to fail. Now, she's told this story a bunch. It is so impressive that she managed to do anything with this because they just did not have faith in this at all. And they were all very upset about Bujold. I know we talked a little bit about this. This is another one that's really interesting. But basically, she was an Academy Award-winning actress. They were very happy about her. And when she left and was replaced by Kate Mulgrew, who, by her own account, had done a terrible, like read for it. Like she came in and read for the role and was awful. Yeah. She said it herself. And so they were just not expecting it to go well. But if you guys haven't seen The Captains, it's what it's called. It's the documentary by Shatner. It really goes into her experience in the beginning and what it did to her and her family and the amount of effort that it takes to be serious, but also be a mom to the cast and crew and to be a captain and have all those lines memorized, to be so professional. She is one of my personal heroes, Kate Mulgrew. She's amazing.
Oh, totally agreed.
Yeah.
Needs a Janeway. We need her now.
Yeah, Star Trek Janeway, guys, please let that be real, man. Please.
I'm telling you, we all just mail coffee grinds to Paramount.
There you go.
There you go.
There's
I hope they
coffee
figure
in
out what
this
it means because I'm not putting a letter in there.
Just the coffee, yeah.
I love how much she's a
Univision.
friend of
What?
the franchise. She is too, though.
Oh no, she is. Yeah, because Janeway, Kate Mulgrew has done a lot of stuff on the side. Never anything huge until Orange Is the New Black. That was a huge thing for her when that ended up landing. But she's been a part of the Star Trek circuit since then. She's really embraced it, and she's a big fan of Star Trek. And what I love the most is that she's a big fan of Janeway. She loves Janeway and she loves Voyager. And I think it's only right for them to feel like that's the best Star Trek, right? Because they're a part of it. But I love to see how proud she is of it. And I just recently watched a very recent, like last week or two, was it at the convention? So a few weeks ago. But the Star Trek Las Vegas convention this year, where she was up on stage talking about the possibility. Somebody asked the question, Star Trek Janeway, possible? And she said, there have been talks, is what she said.
I would love that. That would be so exciting to watch.
It would be incredible. So pumped. Oh my God, because first of all, they're all still around. They're all still super on board, right? These guys are fans. Tim Russ, legend, does all sorts of Star Trek stuff, would totally be down. As we know, Garrett Wang and Robert Duncan McNeil, those two guys are enormous Star Trek fans. They literally host a Star Trek podcast every week, the Delta Flyers, which is amazing. And then, of course, Kate Mulgrew, who's super keen. She's already doing stuff in the Star Trek universe again. She's in Prodigy, which is one of my favorite things. Love Prodigy if you guys haven't seen it. And so I think
you can't forget the Doctor.
Well, I was going to say him and Neelix have always done the convention circuit. They love this whole thing. I think the entire crew would be down to come back. But there's already precedence with 7 of 9. She's already back. We already know her character. She could waltz that whole story right into Voyager, into Star Trek Janeway.
Yeah. Dude, and even in Star Trek Online, she's in Star Trek Online. Like she's in the game.
Awesome.
They named a ship after her too.
Yes.
And she even tweeted about how much she loves the design of it, which I'm like, wow.
Oh yeah.
Oh, did she really? I didn't know.
So great. Yeah, she knows that it's that it's the Janeway class. She even tweeted a whole thing about how it's a beauty.
Where is it? Is it in the Zen store?
No, that's definitely it's one of those rare lockbox
ships.
I looked it up on the market. It's gonna be a while before I get it, but it is.
It's on Mud's Market.
No. You can find it occasionally on the exchange for like 1.8 billion.
Yikes.
True. Yeah.
But it's you can actually see that ship in Discovery.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
The really pictures that I'm seeing for this are actually are from Disco.
The Voyager J.
The Voyager J. Yeah.
There you go, guys. This is it in STO. Bam. Look at that. Look at that beauty. It is so...
where is it? I forgot that the stream's on delay from what I'm hearing you.
It is so on the whole Intrepid vibe. It's, I mean, obviously, and it should be, right? It's like, but it is actually more Voyager than the Pathfinder, in my opinion. And this is one of the ships that the detached nacelles, which I am not a fan of. I'm just going to go on record saying that. This is one of the ships that it actually upsets me the least on. So, I
I
actually
mean,
I
I
like
kind
it.
of like
gorgeous
this.
overall. So.
Yeah,
It is.
I like
It's
it.
gorgeous.
I'll forgive the nacelles.
Yeah. Okay.
I would really love if I could just buy like a little additional add-on and just like attach the nacelles. Like, give me a
Yes.
stapler. Just go out.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest
my
fan
stapler.
of the dash cells, but that Janeway class though,
Take my stapler.
I love. I love
Well,
that
so
one.
the Janeway class was originally going to be the first ship I got in STO outside of like the ones you get while leveling up. And then I looked up
Really?
how much it cost, and I was like, okay, it's not going to be my first ship.
How much does it cost?
You know what? I'm going to go run down in game right now and check so I can tell you guys.
Are you
but
jumping
it
off
was
the
a
no,
lot.
Are you
Azure,
jumping off? Oh
And we never saw
I'm helping.
Azure again.
Oh, I should have disabled my camera right as I landed.
no! That's good. That's good. It's far down. Oh my
Yes,
god,
flat.
that's really far.
It is Azure. That was dangerous, reckless.
I
we
learned
could
it from
all
watching
convene
Commander Justin.
at the lamp.
You
Like,
can
Oh
see
yeah, the lamp.
No,
The
no,
lamp.
this is a great spot. I love this
what?
spot.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a great spot, hey. The fact that this is even in the game, like
It says so
that
much,
this
doesn't it?
exists. Yeah, it does.
Hey,
It-
there's
it
fellow
really
Night Shift
is,
member Engie.
right?
We're very lower decks vibes out there, guys. If you don't know,
Because we love lower decks.
lower
Such a
deck,
good show.
lower deck.
And all at once, a
Which
bunch
we
of
also
people
have
stopped
art commissions of, right?
Yeah, we do.
That's
Diamond
right in the
Rosette is not
Discord.
here tonight, but if you're in the
How do you
Discord,
get them?
we have someone that's in our Discord that does commissions. We're going to be posting her commission listings, but she's done a ton of the lower decks art. If you guys haven't seen the stream starting soon screen, that actually... Here, I'll just put that up real quick. This is us. A lot of this has been done by Diamond, and we're going to be hosting a raffle in the Discord for a free commission of you in real life or your Star Trek Online character or whatever it is that you would like to be done by our amazing artist Diamond Rosette, or affectionately known as Lieutenant Diamond Dax. So if you guys are not already in the Discord, come join, get into the raffle this month. It's going to be great.
I can't even tell you how expensive it is because I believe there are none for sale right now.
Oh wow.
Oh, really?
Ooh.
Not a great
Yee.
sign for my hope of
Yeah.
ever getting one.
Uh-oh.
Oh, what?
Oh,
Oh yes, that's the official podcast one. We were doing the STO one though, so we could all.
I
sit
don't know.
around
I
in the
like this
lounge.
version. I like us hanging
I
out
do
in
too,
Star Trek
yeah.
Online, man.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll be
That's
back
actually
up in a
very
minute.
Yeah, I like this. This is nice. Especially since you get like all the ships in the back too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Some of those are really beautiful. That right there, I think that's
That's where they pay tribute. Or
that ship right there's
There-
got to be a
there are
Grissom
more.
class, right? Is that the T6
Yeah.
Grissom from the Search for Spock?
oh yeah, yeah.
And I
yeah.
can't tell what that is. It kind of looks like a steam runner.
Is that the Steam Runner?
It
Yeah, I was about to
might
say, is
be.
it the Steam Runner?
Yeah.
Don't fall off there, dude.
And of course, there's I know, right? There's an Enterprise E back there, a Sovereign class as well.
Is there really? Or
Yeah,
is
in
it
the
updated?
back behind, like way distant.
Oh
back there.
yeah,
I think that's the Regent class, the T5
Regent,
Regent class.
yeah.
It might be anyway.
so we're gonna talk about.
But yeah,
ships.
ships are like my passion, man. I love ships in the universe of Star Trek so much.
Dude, I love ships so much.
Oh, Angie, is it the Cabot? Okay, so the one that I was saying is the Steam Runner is not. It's the Cabot. I thought that I'd
He
seen
even
it
warned
too.
you that there was one out there.
Here, check this out. Ships. Yes, he's absolutely right. That's what that is. It's the Cabot. There it is. Wow. Good job, Angie.
Nice.
Yeah, this is great. This is a great game.
Right. So are ships actual characters too? Remember
course
what
they
Janeway
are.
was saying?
Of course they are.
Of course they are, dude. I love
Ships are, and the ultimate example of that being the case, right? I think that people loved, like, fell in love with the Enterprise just like Jim Kirk did, and the precedent was set in
Yeah.
the show itself. How many times did they end up saying like, Jim Kirk can't settle down with a woman, he's already in love with a woman, it's the Enterprise. They say that. How many episodes, Jennifer? Probably
Oh,
6,
several,
7, 8.
yeah,
I don't know. There's a ton.
absolutely.
He
It's
loves
referenced
the
a
ship.
lot.
Yeah, and so basically, like, he's in love with the ship. We fall in love with the ship because it's so cool. I would say, even in the 60s, like, the level of design that they brought to the Enterprise is a design that is still so beloved after all these years that people just love the look and feel of the ship, what the ship can do. It just became such a big thing in the fandom to love the ship and the ships in general as they sort of evolved through time. And the ultimate example of the showing of that being the case is Star Trek 1, the motion picture. When they go in and they're like, you know what? Everyone loves the ship. We love the ship. Decades of people adoring this thing. And we never could do it justice because it was like a model. It was a low-res model. They got a ton of money for the motion picture and they finally made a giant, super nice model. And they spent... I actually don't know how many minutes it is. I wish I knew exactly how many minutes it is, but they spent this huge intro at the beginning of the motion picture.
So many minutes. And I mean, I love the ship.
Showcasing it, man.
I really do love the ship, but that was a lot of time displaying the ship.
And maybe for you and me, it wasn't as big of a deal, but for people who grew up in the 60s loving and watching this show, and then finally, like, you have to imagine what that must have been like. For those who aren't aware of the complicated history of TOS, it was like a throwaway show in the beginning that had a hard time getting started. They scrapped it after the pilot, had to completely reshoot, completely recast. They ended up making it. It was weird science fiction, as you know, or may or may not know, but back then, science fiction as a whole genre was like monster from the planet X. Like, that's it. It was like bad monster movies, like B movies. Like, that's what science fiction meant. There literally was no like profound, inspirational or poignant storytelling in science fiction. So it was really weird when they brought that out. It was a very bizarre thing. And season 1 had no money. Season 2 had no money, didn't do very well, and then failed. And there was a huge letter writing campaign from like 5 people who managed to bring it back for a 3rd season where it did its thing and then failed. And it wasn't until subsequent years later that in syndication or rerun, it basically ended up becoming this cult classic favorite of people who ended up loving the show long after it was over. And then decades later, right, or like at least 15 years later or something like that, so much longer, they decide we're going to make a movie. And these people that wrote letters, right, to try to get this show back, these people that had just developed this enormous passion for this show, just to see it, like, you got to imagine what that would be like for us. It would be like, I don't even have an example. But like, for something to love something that much for that long that's been dead. Oh, I guess the closest thing might be like Firefly or something, right?
Man,
like,
I was just thinking Firefly, but I didn't know if it had really been away long enough before that
it had
started.
It was an unprecedented thing what happened with Firefly. That was,
and it was
amazing.
So cool.
And so cool. And actually, I am
like
ashamed to say that I watched Serenity before I watched the show Firefly. I didn't know it was a part of the show at that point.
I mean, that's understandable if you didn't know.
Yeah, and I still ended up having a great experience going back to it. But with Star Trek, it was like all these years later, this failed thing, and then it had built up such a groundswell of fans that they managed to produce a major, big budget motion picture, which back then was unheard of, right? And so to like actually show everyone walking back in, every new shot was a hero shot. Like, here they are, we're here, we did it, we're back, and we're on the big screen, and here's this amazing rendition of the Enterprise, so much bigger, better, and clearer than you've ever seen. Like, yeah, to us now, looking back at it, it's weird, maybe even a little cringe, but at the time, man, you got to imagine what those fans felt. Do you think they were thinking, oh god, this scene's too long? Those guys were cheering and clapping in the freaking theater, man. I mean, they were losing their minds, and rightfully so.
I love the hero shots, man. Even how it's orchestrated and everything too. I will listen to it on my offside, and watch
for
it.
Sure,
it's
dude.
So great, dude. And I love how people are taking it too, and they're putting it in 4K. Like, just it looks so incredible as to what you can look at in edit and everything now. It's just so cool.
It is.
That's what it is. But going back to the other topic as to, the TNG family, the Voyager family, and all that. Do you see what family is going on now? It's Strange New Worlds.
Yeah,
they're so close.
Oh yeah,
and it's crazy.
Yeah, they are close. They love each other. They love what they're doing. They're huge fans of what they're doing. And I think for the first time in this new Kurtzman Trek era, they also get to just know that, like, universally everyone loves what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not contentious. at all.
Yeah.
I still have yet. Someone in chat tell me if I'm wrong, but there's still not a single Trekkie, not a single one that I know that I have talked to who has said anything other than I love Strange New Worlds. Have you found one? A single person?
No.
I don't think there's been one.
I'm sure
No.
you could find one.
I guess
but
you
yeah,
could find
I haven't.
someone.
If you
somewhere,
really
but
dug
it's
deep.
hard.
I was gonna say this is the internet. We can
It's
find
really
someone to not
how
like
can
something.
how can you not like it? Like there's very little that you could even possibly say. Oh, I'm not going to like this part of this show. Like it's.
I
such
haven't
a
seen
likable
enough
show.
hours of Ansem Mount.
Right?
Facts, bro.
I mean, if someone said that and they didn't
That's
like
my
it,
only
I
complaint.
know. I'll just have to be like, we have to mind melt.
Yes. We have to mind melt.
Yeah.
Are you gonna mind meld them to unconsciousness?
Or
Hey,
pull
you know-
a Tuvok and mind melt
Speaking
strangle
of-
someone.
Oh
Speaking
yeah,
of mind
we
melt,
just watched that episode of Voyager yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
remember the mind meld that we were talking about the American when we were watching it with Maple? When Spock says it in TOS, he goes, I've never done this before.
Oh yeah, never done
Never
it to,
done
a,
this
to a
before.
human.
Right.
Never done this to a human
I've
before.
never done it to a
And
human.
Yet,
Yeah.
yet,
Yeah, there's
It's
actually some
Strange
really
World.
good TOS episodes that we're right about to get up to because we
Yeah.
had stopped off right before the menagerie. So the next one we watch together is going to be that one. That's going to
Yeah.
be fun to show Maple.
right?
Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah,
I'm
that but
excited.
that is an interesting so Strange New World sits in such a cool time frame. I think one of the
Yeah.
greatest things that I ever saw with any TV show to date, and we'd mentioned a moment ago that the pilot for Star Trek the original series was a failure, that it basically was rejected by the studio. The famous line was that it was called too cerebral, and they basically ended up people didn't want that. They wanted a swashbuckling sort of like cowboy captain, just sort of winning his way across the galaxy. And this show was too cerebral, and that it wasn't going to be, which is hilarious because, of course, TNG came and was like the single most cerebral show on television ever, and was such a wild success, but maybe more reflective of the 90s at the time. But the 60s, they didn't really want that, and so the time frame that they set it in is so cool because the failed pilot was actually considered canon. They go back to it later in season 1, make it canon 10 years before the stuff that ends up happening with Kirk, and now they've got this 10-year window to do anything they want that we know very little about, to be perfectly honest. They
But that
really
fits
have a
in.
lot of
But that's
leeway.
perfect though, because it fits in so well. Like you said, it's just this nice little gap of time with these characters that we don't really know about, and it's a perfect opportunity to use that. Like I'm actually shocked.
yeah.
Like I'm always surprised that they didn't decide to do that first.
First, what
We
do you
need
mean?
10 seasons.
Like when they were thinking of doing a new Star Trek, like why they didn't say, "Oh, let's if they wanted to do a Star Trek that was around the original series time, why Pike wasn't a thought that would have popped up first before something else."
Well, so they did, right? Disco is set in that same time frame, but they decided to be really weird about it. That's the problem, right? So when they came back, remember that Disco and Strange New Worlds coexist. They overlap utterly, literally, because the entire, the main crew of Strange New Worlds was actually on Discovery. But it was such a strange decision to go from, let's take advantage of this cool time frame that we know very little about. Awesome idea. Great. If I was in that boardroom, I'd be like, hey, there's other things that I would do, but I'm down for that. That sounds awesome. I think at the time, a lot of us wanted something not a prequel, right?
Right.
Everybody wanted, what happens after Voyager gets back? Can we just pick up the story from there and just keep going, please? Rather than doing alternate universes, rewrites, redos, and prequels. I think a lot of Trekkies felt that way about that. But if you were going to pick a time, sure, latch it onto something that we already know about, sandwich it in between like a A and a B that we're very familiar with, fill in that gap. It's a cool idea. Unfortunately, the gap that you chose isn't even in the 90s, it's in the 60s, so trying to get a cohesive art style, technological awareness of what was going on at that time, it was a tough thing to do. We knew they were going to break some rules, and they did. They broke bigger rules than any of us expected to. I think that was the big shock. Let's put the terrible Klingons aside for a second, right? Let's just put that aside. They didn't need to do that. That was crazy. But if you put all of the plot points aside, some of the technological decisions that were being made just seemed like they didn't care very much about that continuity. And I think that that set the fandom on edge right away, because it was very clear that they wanted new fans for a new generation of Star Trek fan. I gotcha. Listen, I'm an old grumpy Star Trek fan from the olden days, but I understand that. I want it too. I want a new generation of Star Trek fans. It's not just for me. I want Star Trek to continue on for another 56 years. I understand that we need new fans, but but to choose that time frame where you decide to put it next to maybe the oldest and most protected in terms of fans, sensitivities, then, like, to put it that close to it, you're already setting yourself up for danger. And then the idea that you're like, yeah, we don't really care about continuity and we're going to rewrite a bunch of stuff. Even if you wrote a good story from that point, even if you made a convincing and awesome Star Trek from that moment on, it was already going to be divisive and piss off some old fans. Like, that didn't need to happen. We could have tried to include both at the same time. It was almost like hey, this is literally going to include Kirk. Like, it's so close to Kirk. We're going to see the Enterprise. We're going to see Kirk in the series. And that invites a certain old school fan in, and then you sort of slap them by doing things like holographic bridge communication. Why? What was the need of that? We literally saw that evolve on Deep Space Nine. That was pointless. And then they're like, hey, we're never doing that again. Get that off my bridge. Obviously, there was some internal stuff, and they were like, let's not do this anymore. They just didn't think that through. I know that there are, like, official Star Trek continuity people that sit on set. Either they just didn't listen to those guys, or they ignored them, or I'm not sure what it is, but that was a weird choice. And I think, Azure, this probably slides right into what you wanted to talk about with the mycelial network.
Yeah, which I'm noticing the time. I will not have time to get into that topic tonight. I'm gonna save that for
That'll be for next week.
but I do want to comment. I wonder how much they were really, like, planning ahead and trying to rely on this idea, like, eventually everything about Discovery and the Glen are going to be classified, and you're not allowed to talk about Michael Burnham outside of certain areas. It's weird. And
yeah.
You mean like how much was pre-planned?
Right, but even if it was pre-planned, I think Merrick's point is still absolutely correct that the beginning of the show starts by setting a bunch of Trek fans on edge, because you're like, wait, what time period is this again? I actually, when I first started watching Discovery, I thought I misremembered what time period it was supposed to be set in, because of like some of the technologies I was seeing. I was like, was I just wrong?
Right. Yeah. The technology was just too advanced in so many.
Like, I have no problem with, like, graphical changes. Like, I love Strange New Worlds art style and everything, and, like, I'm fine with that. But, like, to just have all these technologies that we know aren't used, that seem potentially superior.
And I am curious. I am quite curious about whether the plan was always to have Discovery go into the future.
I can't ever tell, because it seemed to come out of nowhere.
Right. Like, I could see this, like, big plan saying, let's set something in this time period, and then we're going to throw them into the future. And then we're going to have a hook for this time period so that we can put something together for something else. But I don't, but I really doubt that that's what happened. I think the Strange New Worlds thing was more of like a happy accident from what I've heard, from what Merrick has told me. Right?
Whether or not they planned to make the spinoff? No, that was not a plan. It was a fan groundswell thing. One of the coolest things, just to continue the legacy of Star Trek fans making change. And I did not actually get to finish what I was saying earlier. And I know I talked so much, you'd be like, how come you didn't finish? But when Janeway stood up, right, when Kate Mulgrew was up at the convention and she was giving that speech, they said there are talks about it, right, in behind the scenes, sort of like Star Trek Janeway, a thing. She said, has there been an actual offer offered to me? No, it hasn't happened yet, but there have been talks about it. And she said, to be perfectly honest, and this was awesome, she said, really, it's up to you guys. She said to the people in the convention. She's like, it is every bit as up to you as it is to me. And it was like this weird moment. You could tell, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Miss Mulgrew, but it was very clear to me that she was like, listen, you guys make stuff happen. Like, and I would love to do this. Let's make it happen. Talk about it. It was such that moment, because she was like, if people want this, like, you guys can make that and a reality. And I think that's the coolest thing ever, because we've done it a bunch of times in Star Trek.
Star Trek has
ways.
done it. Star Trek was the first to really do that. And I think now that's maybe more common, especially with things like social media and getting kind of pre-hype before you do something. But that wasn't that way. Certainly not during the original series time and when all of that happened with the convention.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
where's the petition that I need to sign?
I know where
I
the coffee
guarantee you
I mean,
it
that's
is
how-
one.
that's how-
Yeah.
I
We should
signed it
find
for Anson Mount. Like, that's what I did for Strange New Worlds. I mean, I remember watching.
Oh no,
it.
no, me too. I did too. I know what you
And-
mean. Yeah.
Yeah, like if Janeway, if you got one, if Kate Mulgrew, you got a petition, count me in. I'll even sign into all my alt accounts. No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say I'll run through the streets and get random people to sign it.
Yeah, I
No,
Merrick's
do
gonna be
that.
one of those people out with the
100%.
clipboard trying to get people's signatures, but not telling them till the end that this is for a new Star Trek series.
I want to point out too, like, because we did say that, Will Wheaton looks absolutely incredible for 50. Kate Mulgrew, if
Oh, I
you're,
can't
if you're gonna
believe
ever
it.
run into this too, you look incredible too. You look
She
ready
does.
to be. For,
Yeah,
for
I'm really
Janeway.
shocked. Like,
Like-
That's
wait,
it, she looks ready.
is Will Wheaton's really
Yeah.
50?
He is.
Right?
He does not look.
Right.
He looks like maybe
No.
tops like 35, 40.
He
That's
looks great.
Yeah, he
That
looks
looks
really
great.
young for his age.
But
Oh,
let's
holy,
let's
holy.
let's talk about like Star Trek Janeway, right? Like one of the things, and I don't mean any disrespect, Sir Patrick Stewart, because we've talked about it last week on the podcast. My favorite captain ever is like TNG era Picard, and I say that, and I have to make that split. I have to make define that dichotomy because Star Trek Picard is a different Picard. It just is different, and it's because of the writing. I'm not a super fan of like. It's definitely reflective of modern society. Basically, like he left the Federation. He's sort of like this old grumpy guy who's like disheartened by a bunch of. It's sad to me, and it doesn't really represent what I think was Picard back then, which is really unfortunate. But some of it is the writing that I've not been super thrilled about because it's not always very positive. But the other thing is like it's nothing that's his fault, and I know he came back to do this not because he needs money, right? He did this to like contribute to the world and to the fandom, and I love him for it. But the fact is that Picard, Patrick Stewart is an older guy, and you could feel it in every scene. He doesn't have that energy.
82.
82. Right? It's crazy that they even can insure him, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So like you can tell the conviction and strength in his voice that defined Captain Picard, that's gone. It's very weak voiced, he's hunched. These are not complaints about the guy. He's lived an awesome, amazing life and accomplished the greatest of things. He's just an 82-year-old man, and so it's hard for me sometimes to watch, and it's not his fault. Again, it's me because I have. That's the thing about us Star Trek fans, right? We have these people that are real people, but we have them in a time capsule, and we just repeatedly watch it over and over again, right? We have stolen these people at this exact moment in their life and just see it every day, every week, every month, every year, whatever it is, and they're exactly the same. So when you're kind of confronted and smacked by the fact that there's so much time that's gone by and they're much older, it's very different. But I'm bringing this up because Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, is a spitfire still, man. She's got that, I don't know, that it factor still. I hear it in her voice. Her voice acting game is top notch. She's been in major Hollywood things recently. As an older character, she sort of like redefined her older acting self. She goes up and she does these conventions, and she's still just, I think she would nail one of these shows, man. I think
absolutely.
she's ready to go for this.
No, and like you said, her voice too, because I know she does a lot of voice acting things, and she's done other
Yes.
voice acting things in the past, and it's just her voice is so phenomenal, and it's
Oh,
so
yeah.
wonderful to hear, and it's still there, and it's still perfect, and I don't know, like also it's just nice to see these women in Hollywood as they get a little older still gonna get really awesome leading type of parts, which is something that's always kind of been a struggle, after you're 30, it's like, well, bye.
Oh, for women and I would say that the last, I want to say like 10 years has been such a boon for older women actors. There's been some of the greatest roles. There are some actors that I think have been acting their whole lives and didn't become amazingly good and appreciated actors until they're older. Janeway was awesome, and I think that that's why I was saying she sort of defined her older acting self, because she was all these great roles. She was mostly a TV actor, but she had so many great roles when she was young. But Orange is the New Black was amazing, dude. If you guys didn't watch that, her character in that was like one of the greatest standout performances of the whole series. And
I
it
actually only got
redefined
into
her.
it once a friend told me that Kate Mulgrew was in it.
Same.
Right? Yeah.
Same.
you
No, I
go.
wanted to see it.
Yeah.
She was like old, grumpy Russian, prisoner, and she rocked it, man. And so like, I just love to see that she can do that. She's got those acting chops. I mean, the woman is such an actor.
Yeah. Listen, I don't want to cut us off early or anything, but I do need to personally head out in the next couple minutes.
No, this is good.
Oh no,
We'll-
this is
we'll
a
end it here.
perfect time to
I
wrap
don't know
up.
if anyone else had like closing thoughts on Janeway series. Start the petition, someone.
Yeah, definitely start the petition. There's going to be a lot of news. I've been posting stuff in the Discord. If you guys are not already in the Discord, get in there. I always post news on anything that I can find about this kind of stuff. I
Hey,
have a
why
lot
don't
of
we
high
all
hopes.
just send envelopes with coffee grounds in them?
I'm
to
telling you, I think it would work.
Paramount.
Honestly, I think that right now where we like, this is why we're doing the podcast now, guys. It is more now than in ever before. And this is a crazy thing to wrap your mind around, right? In the 56 years of Star Trek, we just celebrated 56 years at Star Trek Day this last week. More than any other time in the history of the franchise, there's more going on in the news cycle of Star Trek right now, this moment, than there ever has been. There are 5 current television shows literally already on 5 shows right now. And there's 1, 2, 3, almost 4-ish that have been teased on the side. There's a ton, like movies and all sorts of stuff that are around the corner. Star Trek Janeway, absolutely one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most, that we're hoping that are going to happen. But that's why we're doing the podcast, guys. You're going to hear us every week talking about the news and the new cool stuff and the stuff that could be and should be. And I'm just glad you guys are here with us for this journey. Azure, Justin, Jennifer, you guys are amazing. I love this. We're going to continue this for 5-year mission and beyond. So thank you all for coming. Join the Discord, get
Lifelong
involved,
mission.
and join our watch parties. And we will see you guys next week.
Thank you, Merrick.
Thanks,
And the
everyone.
Discord again is discord.gg/Star Trek Night Shift.
Star Trek Night Shift. There it is. Click that link, guys. Be part of the community. We love you all. Thank you
Nice.
very much for coming. Have a great night and rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper.